He saved her from a flash flood. But she was hiding a dangerous past. The river rose fast, faster than Clara could run. One moment she was crossing the shallow ford with her skirts hitched high. The next, the sky split open with thunder and a wall of water rushed down the gulch. The brown flood came carrying branches, fence posts, even the carcass of a steer, and in its fury it caught her. She tried to scream, but the current stuffed her mouth with muddy water. The world became a whirl of grit and terror. She had been alone, foolishly chasing a shortcut to reach the next town before nightfall. Her small satchel with all she owned was torn from her hands in the first surge. Now she flailed, powerless, lungs burning, eyes wide with panic. She thought of the letters folded in her bodice, letters that could never fall into the wrong hands. She thought of the promises she had made to herself to never be caught again. Drowning, she realized, might be a simpler fate. But then, a voice cut through the roar of water. "Hold on!" It was deep, commanding, carried on the storm. Strong arms seized her, hauling her from the torrent onto a half-submerged boulder. She coughed, choking, clinging to a broad chest that smelled of leather and rain. Luke Whitaker, the rancher, was known for his stubborn courage. He had seen the flood sweeping her downstream from the ridge where he rode fence, and without a thought for his own life, he had plunged into the water. His hat was gone, his shirt plastered to his muscled frame, but his eyes, clear, steady gray, held hers as though he could will her back into breath. "You're safe," he said, though both of them shook with cold. He pulled her up the bank, half carrying, half dragging her, until they collapsed beneath a cottonwood, breathless. Clara coughed again, water spilling from her lips, and clutched at the letters hidden under her dress. She was alive, but too alive. Every beat of her heart a reminder that the past she fled still chased her. She thanked him, her voice hoarse. You saved me." Luke only nodded, brushing wet hair from her face with a gentleness that startled her. "Any soul worth saving, ma'am. Flood don't care who it takes." The storm rumbled off toward the hills, leaving them soaked and trembling on the bank. Clara drew her knees to her chest, shivering, while Luke studied her with quiet curiosity. He had risked his life for a stranger, but already sensed there was more beneath her silence than near drowning. The cabin smelled of pine resin and smoke when Luke carried her inside. Clara's legs still trembled from the flood, and she leaned on him, though she hated the weakness it revealed. The fire he built roared to life in the stone hearth, throwing flickers of gold across the rough-hewn walls. He draped a blanket around her shoulders, thick and coarse, yet warmer than she had felt in months. "Best strip out of them wet clothes," he said gently, turning his back as though modesty mattered more than the fact he had dragged her from death. "You'll catch chill otherwise." Clara's fingers worked stiffly at her dress. She changed into one of his clean shirts he had left folded on a trunk, the fabric hanging loose on her frame. She sat close to the fire, letting the heat drive the cold from her bones. But nothing could banish the deeper chill, the fear that gnawed beneath her ribs. Luke busied himself in the kitchen corner, pouring steaming coffee into tin cups, then slicing bread and salted venison. "Eat," he urged, setting a plate before her. "Food helps a body remember it's alive." Her lips trembled into a faint smile. She broke bread slowly, chewing though her throat fought against swallowing. He watched, not prying, but questions lingered in the air between them. "You headed somewhere?" he asked at last, his tone casual, though his eyes never left hers. Clara nodded too quickly. "West." "Family waiting?" She shook her head. "No, just work, sewing maybe. Folks always need stitches mended." It was a tidy answer, but Luke heard the hollowness beneath it. The way she flinched when thunder cracked outside, the Way her hand kept brushing her bodice where something stiff, papers perhaps, was hidden, told him more than words. Still, he did not press. Instead, he spoke of his ranch, how the cattle had weathered last winter, how the land was both cruel and generous. He told her of his sister's children, who sometimes stayed with him, needing a steady hand. He spoke to fill silence, but also to show her that not every soul in this country demanded confessions before offering kindness. Yet when she thought he wasn't looking, Clara's gaze went distant, haunted. She saw shadows flicker beyond the firelight, faces from the past, men who had promised her protection but delivered only ruin. She had run far, but not far enough. Now this rancher had pulled her from death, and she feared he would regret it, if her past ever caught up. Luke noticed the tremor in her hands. He didn't reach for them, though he wanted to. Instead, he said softly, "You don't owe me your story tonight. Just rest. Tomorrow's sun will bring a clearer trail." Clara nodded, though rest would not come easy. The fire popped, rain drummed on the roof, and inside her heart a storm gathered, one she could not hide forever. By morning, the sun burned bright on the wet earth, steam curling from the prairie grass. Clara stepped out of the cabin, Luke's shirt still hanging on her frame, and felt both exposed and strangely sheltered. Luke was already at work splitting wood, the steady swing of his axe carrying a rhythm of normalcy she yearned for. In town later that week, whispers began. Clara felt them brush against her like prickly weeds. At the mercantile, two women paused their gossip when she entered, then leaned closer, murmuring. A man by the water trough tipped his hat to Luke but cast Clara a look too sharp to be courtesy. "Who's she?" someone muttered loud enough for her to hear. "Ain't she the girl that rode with Tully Haynes's gang down near Abilene?" Clara froze. Blood drained from her face. Luke noticed, setting his hand gently but firmly at her back to guide her past the stairs. He bought the flour and coffee he came for, but he heard the talk too. It dogged them down the boardwalk like a dust devil, and Clara felt the old panic clawing up her throat. That night in the cabin, Clara tried to act calm as she mended one of Luke's shirts by firelight, but her needle slipped, pricking her finger. She hissed and pressed the drop of blood against her lips. Luke watched her a long time before speaking. "Is it true, Clara?" Her breath hitched. "What did you hear?" "That you've been tied up with men who take more than they earn, that you might have been with them." His voice wasn't accusing, only searching. Clara's eyes glistened. She set the sewing aside, unable to meet his gaze. "I never rode by choice. They took me. When I was younger, used me for what I could carry, what I could do. I got away. That's all." Luke studied her, jaw tight. "And those letters you guard so close?" She stiffened, one hand at her bodice. "They're proof of things those men done. I kept them to protect myself. But if they find me, they'll kill me before letting those words spread." The fire crackled between them, throwing shadows across the walls. Luke leaned forward, voice low. "Then we'll see you're not found, not while I draw breath." Clara's throat tightened. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe in any safe harbor, but she knew the gang never left loose ends. Out on the prairie, dust rose in the distance, and the sound of hooves echoed faintly through the evening air. By the second night, the hoofbeats were no longer faint. They thundered across the valley like war drums, rattling the panes of Luke's cabin. Clara stood at the window, pale as the moonlight spilling over her face. "They've found me," she whispered, voice breaking. Luke set his rifle on the table, checking the chamber with practiced calm. "Then they'll wish they hadn't." It wasn't bravado. It was a steady promise. He gathered extra cartridges, his jaw tight. Clara felt torn between gratitude and dread. His kindness had already cost him too much, and now his life might pay the rest. By dawn, 5 riders appeared on the ridge. Tully Haynes rode at their head, his black hat low, his grin wicked. "Clara," he bellowed across the yard, "you got something belongs to me?" Luke stepped out onto the porch, rifle steady in his hands. "Ain't nothing here for you." Tully laughed, dismounting with a swagger. "You think one man can stand against us? She's ours, always was." Clara stepped forward, trembling but fierce. "No more. You lied, you stole, you killed innocent." "Folk, I kept the letters, Tully. I can prove it all." She held the packet high, her voice ringing stronger than she felt. The gang snarled, hands twitching toward their guns. Luke's rifle cracked, splitting the morning silence. One outlaw fell back clutching his shoulder. Townsfolk, drawn by the noise, began gathering, men with shotguns, women gripping iron pans, even children with rocks in their fists. The small community had suffered from Tully's gang for too long. The standoff burned hot. Bullets hissed through air thick with dust. Luke fought like a man born to defend, firing and reloading with grim precision. Clara ducked behind the porch rail, heart pounding, until she saw Tully closing in. He wasn't aiming for Luke. He was aiming for her. Her hands shook, but she pulled Luke's spare pistol from his belt where it hung, almost forgotten. Rising, she leveled it at Tully. "You'll never own me again." The world narrowed to the hammer's click, her heartbeat, his sneer. She fired. The shot rang true, shattering the outlaw's pistol from his grip. He stumbled, cursing, clutching his bleeding hand. In that instant, the fight drained from the gang. One by one, they dropped their weapons under the town's steady aim. Luke's breath heaved, his shirt torn, smoke curling from his rifle. He looked at Clara, at the strength in her trembling, at the fire she'd found. "You did it," he said softly. She shook her head, tears streaking her dirt-stained face. "No, Luke, we did." The prairie was quiet again. Smoke drifted above the cabins where townsfolk gathered to bind wounds and haul the captured gang into the jailhouse. The morning sun bathed the valley in gold, and Clara stood with Luke on the porch, her body aching, but her spirit unbroken. She held the packet of letters, the proof of Tully's crimes. With trembling fingers, she passed them to Sheriff Amos, who tipped his hat. "This'll see them men hang legal. You done a brave thing, miss." Clara lowered her gaze. "I just wanted it to end." Luke touched her shoulder, steady as bedrock. "It's ended now, and you're free to start over." But freedom was a strange gift. Clara felt both lighter and uncertain, like a bird with healed wings, unsure if it remembered how to fly. The town that had once whispered suspicion now offered bread, blankets, even smiles. Children tugged at her skirt, asking if she'd stay. For the first time, Clara didn't think of running. That evening, Luke cooked stew thick with venison and beans. He set the bowl before her, and the steam curled like a blessing. "A meal's more than food out here," he said. "It's a promise there'll be another." Clara watched him stir the pot, sleeves rolled, hair damp from the pump. His cabin, rough-hewn and weathered, no longer felt like a hiding place. It felt like a home waiting to be filled. Her chest ached with a longing deeper than fear. Later, beneath the cottonwood where he'd first pulled her from death, Luke pressed a small wildflower into her palm. "A seed can survive flood and storm," he murmured. "So can you." Tears shimmered in Clara's eyes. She closed her hand over the bloom, then over his. For once, she let herself believe in belonging, not as someone's prisoner, but as a woman who had endured and chosen her own place. The stars scattered above them, endless and quiet. Luke drew her into his arms, not to claim her, but to steady her. Clara leaned against him, feeling the beat of a heart that asked nothing but truth and offered everything in return. Here, where the land was cruel but could be generous, Clara found what she had never known: safety, respect, love. And with Luke, she began to dream of a legacy built not on running, but on roots. If Clara's courage and heart touched something quiet and true inside your soul, make sure to like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Out here in the Wild West, love may be hard-won, but it's always worth the fight. Join us for more stories of grit, sacrifice, and hearts that endure against all odds.